Once the rising star of the social media world, now facing complete obliteration, the Trump administration has announced they may actually ban TikTok in the United States following reports that China uses it to spy, or as they put it, the U.S. users may be seeding info to Chinese communists. You know, I'm reminded of the video game Fallout. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but there's a line in all of these games where they say, war never changes. Well, that line is wrong. In fact, war does change. We have been faced with the potential for real conflict with China for some time now. After a few tit-for-tats kind of at the South China Sea, nothing really militaristic or physical, but there's been, say, the lasering of a U.S. reconnaissance plane. There have been elephant walks, destroyers, and there's a serious concern about China, but maybe invading Taiwan. We know that China's been making some very serious moves against Hong Kong, recently passing a national security bill, which has many Hong Kong residents worried that their rights are going to be stripped away. We face a real potential for conflict with China because we've long been at odds with them and they are a growing superpower. There's something I've referenced several times called Thucydides' trap. And it basically says that when a rising power seeks to displace or is on path to displace the power, war breaks out. So war won't appear the same way that we're used to necessarily. Information war will be a huge factor in how we actually decide these battles and who gains control of certain areas, who controls resources. And perhaps there won't be a hot war between us and China. Perhaps it will be strange manipulation of young people through social media apps. TikTok may be banned. TikTok was banned in India. And this had some pretty strange effects. One young person reportedly took their own life, and it suggested it was because of the ban on TikTok. In response to the announcement that TikTok may be banned, several people on the app commented, "This is their life, no," and they're freaking out. You see, I don't believe that TikTok is a legit platform. And I'll give a better explanation of how I think social media apps manipulate people into thinking they actually have a user base. But I believe they use addiction tactics to trick people into thinking that something good is happening when they use these apps, when in reality, they're probably talking to bots. Young people are being essentially mind controlled in a sense, made to be addicted to this system that is social media for some kind of monetary or political benefit. The big risk here for the United States is that if TikTok really is spying on people and using addictive tactics, they risk, or I should say we are at risk of creating a generation dependent upon some kind of addictive system controlled by China. So perhaps, as much as everybody doesn't want to hear it, banning TikTok may be the right move. But how about we do this? Let's take a look at the news and see what's actually going on. And then here's what I'm going to do for all of you at the end of this video. I'm going to explain to you the manipulation technique used by tech companies to trick people into using their platforms to essentially mind control them to get new users. It's pretty fascinating stuff, but it's not necessarily the news, so I'll save it for the end. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate. If you would like to support my work, there's many ways you can give. There's a P.O. box if you'd like to send some stuff, but the best thing you can do, share this video. Many people are probably wondering why TikTok might be banned. Maybe you use it, maybe you don't. It's very popular among Gen Z. Admittedly, it does not have a very large user base relative to other apps in this country, but it is still one of the biggest at around 34 million users. If people are now freaking out about this, maybe they need to know why this is happening. Now, if you just want to watch, hit the subscribe button, the like button, the notification bell, and let's read the news. Fox News reports Pompeo warns of potential restriction of Chinese TikTok app. U.S. users may be seeding info to Chinese communists. They report Pompeo told the Ingram Angle that he and President Trump are taking the reports seriously after host Laura Ingraham said India had already banned the app and Australia is considering doing so as well. We are taking this very seriously, and we are certainly looking at it. We have worked on this very issue for a long time. Whether it's the problem of having Huawei technology in your infrastructure, we've gone all over the world, and we're making real progress getting that out. We had declared ZTE a danger to American national security, said Pompeo. With respect to Chinese apps on people's cell phones, I can assure you the United States will get this one right too, he said, adding that he did not want to dive into specifics and potentially get ahead of any presidential announcement. But it is something we are looking at. He said, going to warn Americans that they should be cautious in using TikTok, lest they want their private information in the hands of the Chinese Communist Party. Now, listen, that includes your email, your birthday, your password. Now, perhaps you use the same password on TikTok you use in other places. And if they want, they will steal your information. You do not have the same legal protections, when it comes to a Chinese app that you would in the United States. If China gets access to all your information and then seeks to, at some point, subvert the economy of the U.S., they could post all of the most embarrassing things about you and literally everyone else, and that would not be fun. Don't take my word for it, man. Just listen. Think about how simple it is. If you use the same password, and most people do, they have your email, they have your password, they have your birthday. I don't know if they actually have your birthday, but typically your login and your password, people repeat use, which means they can get into your email, they can get into your school, they can take your information. And how would you feel if one day you woke up and everything you've ever said to people was published? Think about, well, you get the idea. All right, let's read on. Pompeo also responded to former Obama administration National Security Advisor Susan Rice and the potential 2020 Democratic vice presidential candidate after Joe Biden slammed him for appearing to be one of what she called sycophants and weaklings who purportedly refuses to properly advise Trump. I don't care for reading into that argument between Pompeo and Susan Rice. I care about what's going on with TikTok. Now check this story out. Back in March, U.S. senators were looking to ban TikTok on government cell phones over spying concerns. They said it was the latest attempt to rein in technology companies by Hawley, who has repeatedly clashed with big tech companies. The fears over spying by China have been around for a long time. Now, I want to show you something real quick. For those that have made it this far and you're still wondering, what is TikTok? You may have seen this viral video where this feller here was eating dried ramen noodles, crunching on them and sprinkling, the seasoning onto them, while he corrected Chris Cuomo of CNN. This video went very, very viral on Twitter. So maybe you saw it. If you didn't, this is the gist of what TikTok is, okay? You have a video or something playing behind you, you talk or you dance. Some people make posts, sometimes they're political. In March, there was a serious concern that government agents, politicians or otherwise, would be using it, and then China would steal that information. They reported 2 Republican senators on Thursday introduced a bill aimed at banning federal employees from using Chinese social media app TikTok on their government-issued phones, amid growing national security concerns around the collection and sharing of data on U.S. users with China's government. The bill by Senators Josh Hawley and Rick Scott comes as several U.S. agencies that deal with national security and intelligence issues, including the State Department and the Department of Homeland Security, have banned employees from using the app. It is also the latest attempt to rein in technology companies by Hawley. We get this. TikTok, as recently as June 29th, was found to be spying on you. Okay? Let me tell you what's going on. All right? If you use this app, maybe you don't care they're spying on you. I don't, whatever. The bigger issue here isn't necessarily the spying. They're going to collect data on you, your habits. They're going to use that against us because we are not allies. I mean, look, to varying degrees, we cooperate with China. We've had an ongoing trade war. There is a real concern over a potential hot war, meaning military action. But the current iteration of warfare involves cyber attacks as well as manipulation techniques. If they get people, whether they're spying on them or not, wrapped up in some kind of addiction on this app, they can then start manipulating your behavior in very horrifying ways. They can reward you with clicks and views if you say the right thing. This is a known tactic of the Chinese Communist Party in manipulating people into slowly giving in to their ideology. You'll say something where you're like, I don't think, it matters that China's spying. And then all of a sudden you get 10,000 views and all these likes and new followers. And you're like, wow, but it's a trick. Now I'll loop back to this, but let's talk about the spying issue for now. They say TikTok is still spying on iPhone users by secretly reading content saved to clipboard. Devices running on the beta version of Apple iOS 14 have revealed. They say the firm came under fire for snooping earlier this year and vowed to stop accessing devices' clipboards, but users testing the new operating system found TikTok has not kept its promise. When the app accesses the clipboard on a device with iOS 14, a notification appears at the top, and a video shared on Twitter shows that TikTok was looking at the clipboard every free strokes, even when it was running in the background. That means every time you copy something, a link, a message, something very private you don't want anyone to know about, they steal it. And they know about it. And this has been going on for some time. So let me just say to anybody who's listening, if you happen to be a young person using this app, I'm sure there are many things you've been privately looking at on your private device, and you would not be happy to find out they know about it. They have it. And what would happen if they decided to share it? There's an idea, about what happens when all of our private information is just published. Every message, every search, our browser history. There are jokes about people who are like on their deathbed saying something like, delete my browser history, because we all search for things and go to websites we don't want anyone to know about. So what would happen if everything you did on your phone was stolen by an adversary of the United States? They could easily disrupt our economy by releasing all of this data. Or like I mentioned, if they have your password, they can hack into all your stuff. And I'll stress for you again, how would you feel if your browser history was made public, that anyone could just search for it? How would you feel if the messages you sent, every single one, was now part of a publicly accessible database? Chaos, I might add. But there is some good news. There is some good news for most Americans. It is not the biggest app in the world. They say in 2019, social video app TikTok had approximately 37.2 million users in the United States. This figure is projected to increase by about 22% year over year. So as of right now, they project around 45 million users. It's big. It is. Not the biggest. And if they make the ban now, perhaps they can do it soon enough before it's too late. Now, many of you may be angry. You may be saying, I have a following on TikTok, man. That's not fair. You can't ban me. Don't worry. I'm going to shatter your dreams in a very disgusting and offensive way in just a moment. It's not real. You need to understand this. It's not real. In fact, it's not real on many social media platforms. You've been tricked. You think you're famous. You think you have likes and views. You don't. You really don't. And that's a sad reality. But people refuse to accept it. And I'm going to read a little bit more, but we'll break this down. I want to talk about the look, I want to ease into the reality of apps like TikTok because I don't want to freak people out too much who might be addicted to it. I'm showing you here Instagram users as of May 2020. There are approximately, I believe, 131 users by 2022. They say Instagram is one of the most popular sites. The photo sharing app most recently reported 500 million daily active users and 1 billion monthly active users. Okay, so I was way wrong on my number. I misread. 500 million daily active users. It is more than 10 times bigger than TikTok. Okay, so calm down. Now, in response to the spying scandal, we have seen anonymous hackers targeting TikTok saying, delete this Chinese spyware now. It is. Interestingly, Anonymous is not known to be a right-wing organization, but to see Anonymous, which is not, ideologically aligned for the most part, typically aligning with the left, in agreement now, I should say Trump following suit over the spying allegations. We've got some unity here, man. And we do know that India actually banned TikTok. Now, this article from Wired tries to strike down the threat of China by saying that the ban by India dispels the myth of the China bogeyman, they say, I'm sorry. The argument is that because TikTok is unregulated, because it's spying, it's now being banned. That shows that people won't stand for what China is doing. Sure. I want to show you now something worrisome. And then I'm going to shatter the world of all of you who use TikTok. And I'm going to explain. Let me just show you this. This is from journalist Taylor Lorenz. She said, TikTok room followers react to the news of the U.S. potentially trying to ban TikTok. There's people saying, no, what, no, bruh, you're lying, or Bree, you're lying. I keep refreshing somebody, bring me popcorn. Hell nah. Well, then I won't really have a life. These are interesting posts, right? Let's not U.S. TikTok is literally my life. No, what am I going to do for 10 hours of my day now? These are people who are being manipulated and controlled because China understands the power of social media. And I got bad news. Like I mentioned earlier, you're talking to robots. You're not talking to real people. I've had this conversation with people who work in tech and with some high profile personalities who had been using this platform for a long time. I'm gonna have to break some bad news to you. Allegations, mind you. Allegations. China. So Taylor says, from a source who is a Sway House neighbor, all is very quiet at the house. There is just some empty McDonald's chicken nuggets container on their sidewalk, sure, whatever. But Taylor did tweet about this. After Saya Kakar, 18-year-old TikTok star, dies by suicide, was suffering from depression, they say. No suicide note has been discovered by the authorities, but reports suggest that the ban on TikTok could have pushed her to take her life. According to the youngster's family and friends, she had been suffering from depression for a few months, and the TikTok ban could have been one of the triggers. They say last month, the government of India announced a ban on 59 Chinese apps that were listed on Google Play, and that included TikTok. Let me tell you a story. We're going to play this game, and then I'm going to show you what's going on. Several years ago, like many, many years ago, I had a conversation with some big tech personality, big tech funding individuals. And the conversation was around how to compete with the likes of Twitter, Reddit, Facebook. What I'm going to say to you now is I'm just going to, for legal reasons, allegations, speculation as to what TikTok is, how they function, and not necessarily them specifically, but many social media apps, including the big players like Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. This is the conversation in the gist of it. How is it that Reddit came to be as prominent as it is? Well, I'm going to just make sure I'm prefacing everything with allegations and speculation and rumor for sure, but check this out, look this up. There were conversations happening around techniques Reddit used early on, and Twitter as well, that they would use bots, accounts to create fake interactions so you felt like you were actually interacting with people and being rewarded for the things you were saying. Why would anyone use a social media network that no one else is using? It makes no sense. If I post and there's no one there to see it, why bother posting? To many people who have very few followings, they don't post either, thinking if I'm going to post and no one sees it, why bother posting? In order to get around this problem, fake users are created. The fake users then interact with you. I'm going to be very careful for legal reasons as to what I talk about, but my understanding is that Reddit did use fake accounts, and I think this is widespread knowledge. You can look this up, that Alexis Ohanian, one of the original founders, was using fake accounts to interact with new users to make them believe there was actually a community here and the forum was working. This encourages them to come back, to keep posting, because if no one interacts, they get bored, they leave, right? There's no people here. Why go to a party when nobody's there? What if you thought people were there? Then you'd show up. So when certain apps came out relatively recently, I had many friends start telling me I had to get on this app because they were gaining so many followers. A few individuals I know who have very disengaged followings, but somehow a decent amount, were bragging about how they had 500,000 followers on this particular app. And so I said, show me. And sure enough, the comments were all very obvious and generic. And I said, this is the technique described to me a long time ago. Here's what you do. In order to create a dominant social media platform, you create the app and you run some ads for it. You try and you target young people on, say, Facebook. You show them the app and you show young people in ads, using these apps. Once the young people start using it, you slowly give them fake followers so they feel like they're becoming popular and what they're doing is working. This is a tactic of like any dealer. You give them a little taste and then you reward them. And when they do what you want, you give them bigger and bigger rewards. The conversation was basically this. If you were to run an ad campaign for a new social media app targeting high school kids, as long as they're older than 13, but young enough to be impressionable, you could convince them to sign up and start making posts. Once they do, you have fake accounts interact with them, cheering them on, telling them they're really cool. You then start giving them slightly more followers than they could give on any other platform. Not too many, but just enough. It has to seem real. All of a sudden, you end up with a 16-year-old, 17-year-old kid who's got 10,000 followers on your new app. They go to school and they say, you guys are still using Twitter? That's so lame, dude. I'm over on this app over here and I got 10,000 followers. And they go, what? No way. You have 10,000 followers? Yeah, because I've been posting, man, and people really like my stuff. They feel good about what they're posting. You end up creating addicts who don't want to leave. You got to make sure you feed that addiction. Then the entire time you could potentially be spying on them, manipulating them. But more importantly, there is tremendous economic power in social media. You could be displacing other social media companies very, very easily by doing this. Once you have a decent amount of young people who are convinced they've become influential, they become extremely addicted to it, and there you go. You've pushed the snowball down the hill. You have very little to do at this point. You stop running the advertisements, and you let these young people brag enough to boost your base. And there you go. All of a sudden, you have young people saying things like, oh, I don't use Instagram anymore because I have way more followers on this one. I don't use Snapchat anymore because I have way more followers over on this app. And then their friends jump ship and want to join too, thinking, oh man, I want followers. And you do the same thing. You make sure certain ones get boosted. You want them to have a little bit more followers than anywhere else. You want them to feel like they're getting better interaction on your platform. And then once you've cast that off, you step back and let the snowball roll down the hill. Now you've got a new generation adopting an app that is not real, with hundreds of thousands to millions of fake followers that no one can verify. And they think they're getting views. They think they're getting attention, but they're not. How many of these people can walk down a street, these stars, and actually have people say, I know who you are. I'm a fan. I would imagine relatively few, but I would also imagine that based on, how far we've come with some of these apps and how long they've been around, they've now gotten a decent amount of active users that literally do exist. In which case, you end up with addicts in India, for instance, taking their lives. You end up with people actually interacting, real communities forming, and then the fake system, you can take away, essentially the training wheels of your social media app and get people actually addicted and using it. And then over time, that younger generation uses your app, displaces, say, the likes of Facebook. I'm sure that Facebook will be very, very happy to know or to hear that the U.S. is considering banning this app. But let me just tell you that social media addiction is a real thing. The tactics used by Twitter, by Facebook, and all these platforms are real and obvious. There's a reason why Twitter won't remove the like and the retweet count or your follower count. It's been talked about for years. Maybe we remove your follower count so no one knows how many people really follow you. The problem is it would destroy Twitter. People are rewarded by posting something and seeing those numbers. What do people not like on Twitter? They don't want to see 1,000 replies and 100 retweets. That's called getting ratioed. These numbers play a role, and we have developed a culture around them. People want to see that if they say something, people amplify it and like it. It makes them feel good. I've talked about this problem with YouTube, for instance, that you can tell when a YouTuber is losing views based on, or let me restart. Often you'll see a video from a YouTuber where they're like, I've been working really hard and I just got to take a break. I don't know if I can do this job anymore. And they get all depressed and they're like, it's been so hard lately. All you got to do is look at their past few videos and you'll see their viewer count is going down. It really is an addiction. Every day they expect to get more views. That growth proves that what they're doing is working. And if they don't feel like what they're doing is working, they start to feel bad. They're being pulled down. And then eventually they snap and say, I can't do this anymore, because they feel like they're fighting and climbing as hard as they can, but they're still sinking. And it could be for reasons that's out of their control, and it's not really a bad thing. Maybe you made a channel dedicated to like baking cakes, and then eventually the baking cake fad goes away, so people stop watching. Then these people feel like they're losing out. It's funny. Somebody who was once happy to have 10,000 views, 2 years later now gets 200,000 views. Then a year later gets 100,000 and gets depressed saying, I'm just not getting those views anymore. Even though they're still getting way more than they got a couple of years ago, the addiction is real and people's emotions are tied to their engagement and interaction on these platforms. You can create an addiction and control an entire generation. And that's why social media is bad enough, let alone an app controlled by China. I'm not entirely convinced the app is, legal reasons. I'm not entirely convinced some of these newer social media apps are legitimate. Based on who I've talked to and what I've seen, I really don't think so. I think a lot of young people are being manipulated into thinking they're actually engaging with people, and they're not. Perhaps their immediate friends use it, but a lot of the wider interaction is probably not real. And this should be obvious to anyone. When you look at somebody who's active on, say, YouTube, how many views do they get versus somebody who joins the new and exciting app and then all of a sudden has this cascade of new followers and interactions? It's really obvious what these platforms are doing to manipulate young people into getting addicted to their platforms. Then what happens? They seed information, they manipulate your behavior, and they can control you. But the last thing I want to say on this, because we'll see if the ban ever actually takes place, is that there have been other issues with foreign interference and influence in our younger generations. Why is it that intersectionalism has become so prominent? The Democratic Party is being overrun with this far-left ideology. Well, I'll give you one example. AJ Plus, a social justice lens on a world struggling for change. They were getting billions of views on Facebook only a few years ago. They're still relatively prominent. They are very far-left intersectionalists, and this is a foreign state-funded news operation. Why won't anyone call this kind of stuff out? Maybe it doesn't matter all that much. I kind of think it does. We have foreign organizations creating propaganda and manipulation campaigns in our country to twist the minds of our young people so that in 10 or 20 years, when these young people are the leaders of industry, they will have warped views of the world, and then we lose our position. Maybe it's better that the U.S. slowly slinks away than as opposed to the possibility of a real World War III with China or something like that. Or maybe the United States needs to uphold the values of liberty and democratic institutions, the right of the individual. Otherwise, the authoritarianism of China will take over. And not just China, but other countries. I'm not entirely confident. I can see these manipulation techniques and these tactics taking over. Maybe it's too late to ban TikTok. Maybe you've already got 37 million people in this country who are addicted. I don't know. But I can say that it's a start. Maybe something needs to be done. We'll see how things play out. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.